Welcome to the Breaking News Bears podcast. I'm your host, Chris Capone, joined alongside my co-host once again, Evan Davis. And the winter meetings have been exactly as advertised as we get to the most important part of the MLB offseason. We're getting to a point now where some of the heavy hitters available in free agency are being moved, and there are trades being made, along with speculation about some trades to be made and other moves to be done. Some notable news to take place over the last 24 hours were the Yankees signing Max Fried to a massive 8-year deal, the most ever signed for a left-handed pitcher. The Blue Jays making a trade for Andres Gimenez from the Guardians, and rumors that the Cubs and Astros are currently in trade talks surrounded around Kyle Tucker. And what does this mean for the future outlook of the Astros? All that and more to discuss. But first, Evan, I'll ask you, what is the most notable thing you took away from the news that broke yesterday?
Well, I picked a great time to take a nap because I wake up to Max Fried and the Yankees agreeing on a deal. And before I went to bed, they said that Max Fried was going to have his decision by Thursday, but I think they just got the days mixed up. Thursday became Tuesday, the other T and the calendar week. But I mean, you're talking about a Yankees team that was probably shocked by the fact that Juan Soto didn't re-sign with them. I mean, you knew he was going to stay in New York. You thought it might have been with the Yankees, especially after going on a World Series run. I mean, nothing better than that in your first year and eventually only year with the team. But Max Fried getting 8 years and $218 million seems like such a desperation move by the Yankees, and it honestly makes the Dodgers deal with Blake Snell look that much more better. Does that make sense? No, it just looks better because now you're talking 5 years, 182. There's not as much of a, commitment. They're roughly the same age anyways, but the Yankees, you look at it in, let's say, like when in the next coming years, in the next 5 years or so, you're talking about paying Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, and Garrett Cole, who are all going to be closer to 40. You're paying them over 25 million and then even upwards of 35 million dollars on an AAV standpoint, which just it doesn't seem feasible in the long run. I don't see Max Fried ending his career, or at least one of those three pitchers ending their career in New York. And to give a 31-year-old pitcher in Max Fried 8 years, like Yamamoto got 12 years, but he was 24 when he got that deal. We're talking about a 31-year-old in Max Fried who he's a very, very efficient. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball. I think he has the best ERA statistically since 2020, and right behind him is Garrett Cole. So they have a great rotation. But they need to build out the rest of this roster to even get to October for this team to actually use the resources that they have. Like they still have big voids to fill. And I think it was a panic move, but if you're going to make a panic move, you might as well do with Max Fried. I know they extended out the contract to lower the AAV so that way you're under the luxury tax, but I don't know. I think maybe even Max Fried was kind of shocked, and I'll let you go, and then after that, I want to get into the Red Sox because I've always been right. Always been right
I
about them.
mean, I mean, yeah, we look at Max Fried, and yes, he has been one of the best pitchers in league, as you said, since 2020, one of the lowest ERAs. But there's also been some questions about, what does this mean for the Yankees now with the rest of their rotation? You look at their rotation, it's looking like it looks like Nestor Cortez probably is unlikely to pitch this year,
Mhm.
just because of the injury that he sustained. And
And
then
getting sunned by Freddie Freeman, but
yeah, and then coming back and, pitching in the World Series despite the injury, now having
Mhm.
to go through surgery. Their rotation, as you said, looks really nice from looking at it from afar, where you have Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, Luis Gil, and Clark Schmidt. But like you said, the rest of their lineup, they need a lineup that can hit. You just lost Juan Soto. You can fill up the lineup with as much pitching as you can, but at some point you're going to need hitters. You're going to need people in that lineup that can come in and hit. Because right now it's looking like Gleyber Torres is going to leave the Yankees.
Mhm.
It looks like he's probably going to take like a 1 year prove it deal with the Angels. It looks like because the Jays and the Angels were both looking at a 1 year deal with Gleyber Torres, and then the Jays made a trade for Andres Gimenez, so they don't need a second baseman anymore. But
Mhm.
it looks like Gleyber Torres is going to leave, and you're losing a lot of other players, like Juan Soto already left. They need to figure out a way to, bolster this lineup even more. And they've looked at, Christian Walker has been in negotiated with the Yankees, and that's a good piece for them defensively and offensively. But what more does it really do for them?
Mhm.
You're not gonna replace the talent of Juan Soto. obviously, like that's not going to happen with the remaining free agents. But there needs to be a way that the Yankees retool and reconstruct their roster in a way that
Yeah.
they can do this to kind of compensate for what they lost. And I don't think spending 8-year deal on Max Fried, who's going to be 39 at the end of his contract, I don't think that's a good enough way to, do this deal. And as you said, you'll go into it about the Red Sox and their offer. I think the Yankees overpaid and overbid on Max Fried, and it wasn't I don't think it's the smartest move to make, but it is a move that needed to be done. But I don't think for 8 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you look at Max Fried in the postseason, like he's not statistically a great postseason pitcher. I mean, we're talking about 20 games played, a 5.10 ERA, a whip at 1.5, in 67 innings pitched. You're looking at a strikeout to walk ratio of 3.7, which, it's really not that great in the grand scheme of things. And I that was like in his quote unquote prime. And he's still there at 31 years old, but I just I don't get it with the Yankees, and everyone's like, oh, well, this rotation, and like to your point, like this rotation come October can be scary. Let's just worry about getting to October with this team because offensively, it's Aaron Judge, and then the rest are nobodies, respectfully. Like Jason Dominguez has been a prospect for 12 years, it feels like. I mean, obviously, you still have Trent Grisham, but I just, Verdugo's a free agent. We talked about Gleyber Torres is a free agent. Torres was batting at the number one spot in your lineup. Obviously, he wasn't that great during the regular season, kind of turned it up in the postseason, but you're talking about losing two of your top four hitters in your lineup and you haven't done anything to replace them yet. And obviously, you weren't going to make moves because you were still holding on hope for Juan Soto. But now you got to go after a Teoscar Hernandez, which I hope he stays in LA. Fingers crossed. But they're probably going to overbid for Teoscar because it seems like the Dodgers, like the Dodgers are offering him a 3-year deal. I feel like the Yankees are just going to offer him the 4-year deals and just say F it. Like we need players. There's still Santander available. They're probably going to get one of those two guys. But I mean, even when you look at this in the grand scheme of things, you're probably going to move Aaron Judge back to right field, which makes the most sense for him in the long term and the short term. Like him playing center field is not really ideal. And now with Juan Soto gone, you can move him back to right field and figure out what you want to do at center. Maybe that's where you put Jason Dominguez. But I don't know. I really don't get it. And now onto the Red Sox, who I feel like I continue to be a broken record player, and I apologize. But everyone's saying before the offseason began, oh, the Red Sox are going to probably walk away with two of Max Fried, Corbin Burns, or Blake Snell. Well, Blake Snell's in LA with the Dodgers, and Max Fried just went to the Yankees. And the Red Sox, it was reported by Joel Sherman, so very reliable source, that the Red Sox offered Max Fried 7 for 190, which in the grand scheme of things, isn't that terrible of a deal. It's just the Yankees were desperate, and the Red Sox, I don't blame them for that because, like, even 7 years so now we know who that mystery team was that offered a 7-year contract, and I'm sure the Yankees were just like, forget that, let's do an extra year. We just need someone so our fans don't kill us. But again with the Red Sox, like their unwillingness, obviously, like they spend, but they're not spending. And this is a team that has potential. And now you're seeing your rivals, which I don't know also what the Orioles are doing. I mean, they got to wake the hell up too. Are you getting Corbin Burns? Because now a lot of the elite pitchers are off the market. But with the Red Sox specifically, it's like we're gonna get this guy, we're gonna get this guy, we're gonna get this guy, and it never works out. And at one point, you just got to stop kidding yourself and stop dangling a donut in front of your fan base. Like either put your money where your mouth is or shut up about it.
Yeah, and you talk about, looking at the rivals of the Yankees. Like you said, the Red Sox aren't doing anything. The Orioles are kind of in no man's land.
Yeah.
Right. Yankee Stadium in Florida for the whole season. But the Jays are an interesting team, and they made a deal last night for three-time Gold Glover, one-time Platinum Glove winner Andres Jimenez.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Very interesting deal, trading away Spencer Horwitz and an outfielder from the fourth round pick from the previous draft, Nick Mitchell, for Andres Gimenez and Nick Sandlin, the worst reliever they could have got from the Guardians bullpen, by the way.
Well, that's
Uh,
not, I mean, that is
yeah,
still like a compliment to the Guardians, though.
still, it's the thing is that, making this deal and you have now a guy who's making 10 million this year, 15 million next year, but then 23.5 million the next 3 years, and the fourth year being a team option.
Yeah.
It's a really backloaded contract for a guy who's been nothing but regressing offensively since 2022. Uh, in 2022, he was Andres Gimenez was amazing.
Yeah.
He was looking like the future of the Guardians franchise and looked like a steal for that Lindor trade.
Hmm.
Looked like he was gonna, do really good for them. 837 OPS, almost 300 batting average, and then the next year a 712 OPS, and then this last year a 638
Yeah.
OPS. It's really bad for it's he was really a positive outfielder, not positive outfielder, a positive force offensively.
Hmm.
20 stolen bases, 30 and 30 the next 2 years,
Hmm.
but then just falling off offensively is
Hmm.
something, no one wants to see. And hopefully the Jays are thinking we can fix them offensively, but it looks like the Jays World Series is trying to get that third consecutive team gold glove because that looks like the only thing they care about right now. They want to
Yeah.
shore up infield defense, but it's an interesting move for them, making this deal. And then the Guardians actually flipping Spencer Horwitz, who they got from the Jays,
To the
to the Pirates
Pirates.
and got Luis Ortiz and two other minor league pitchers. uh, Really interesting move for them because the Guardians needed starting pitching and they got a pretty decent young starting pitcher, and the Guardians know how to develop talent.
Hmm.
It's a really interesting look for the Guardians, getting out of this deal that was looking like it's going to end up as one of the worst contracts in baseball with
Yeah.
23.5 million for a guy who's been nothing but regressing offensively. Granted, he's only 25 and can get better, but still not the best move in my opinion.
Yeah, just to piggyback off Luis Ortiz, you're looking at a Guardians team that was struggling just to find someone to throw the ball. And Ortiz threw 135 innings last year, had a pretty solid ERA, 3.32 ERA, a whip just above one. Like, this is a very solid pitcher. He's not a huge strikeout guy, walks like a little bit, but back to Andres Gimenez. I mean, I don't really know what Ross Atkins is doing here. I know like there's a lot of mixed emotions between like, oh my God, we got a gold glove second baseman and we needed someone to play second base, but I mean, he can't hit the ball at all. An OPS in the 630 range is not that great. And when you look at Andres Gimenez baseball savant page, it's a guy that strikes out not a ton, 15%. So it's not too crazy. But when you're looking at it, he only walks in 4% of his at bats. So really, it's like if he's not inducing hits, he's really not getting on base for you. And, the barrel's really nothing. The average exit velocity is pretty putrid, to be honest, around 86 miles per hour. Just really not great numbers offensively. But I mean, fielding wise, he's Dalton Varsho in the infield. So I mean, yeah, to your point, he's only 26 years old, so he still like has time. I'm not ready to completely write him off, but when you're talking about trading a pretty sizable quote unquote prospect in Spencer Horwitz, you would think the return would not be another project piece as well. And I think it is fair to call Andres Gimenez a project piece just because I mean, you look at his numbers, it's continuously regressing where 2022, 17 home runs, 2023, 15 home runs, and then 2024, 9 home runs. He does steal a fair amount of bags, but it's not like his plate appearances are going down. They're actually going up. So it's kind of concerning that the numbers are declining the way they are.
Yeah, and it's just like, the Jays were looking for obviously someone to clog up that second base position. They were looking at it
Hmm.
right now with, either Orelvis Martinez or Will Wagner, and both of them are too young to really, go through a full season. And they got someone who's really good defensively and can move to shortstop if Bo were to ever get injured or, leave next year.
Hmm.
But the thing about the Jays is that they need to sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to a long-term deal. And I don't know if this is really the move that, really gives Vladdy the confidence of being like, oh, hell yeah, I'll re-sign. I'll say a 12-year deal.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's willing to sign after seeing what his best friend Juan Soto just got by,
Yeah.
betting on himself and going to free agency. I think if Vladdy were to go to free agency right now, if this was this year, some team would offer him 500 million for 12 years. And I
Hmm.
think that's not it just seems like a bit of an overpay, granted that the highest AAV for a first baseman was like 31 million by Albert Pujols. And now it'll be Vladdy would move that up to 41 million. If you do that,
Yeah.
it still looks like a bit of an overpay. But the way the baseball contracts are going for stars right now, I don't think 500 million for 12 years is that much of an overpay for someone like Vladdy, who's only 25 years old.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, like as you mentioned, it's an AAV close to 42 million a year. I think Vladdy is definitely worth that. It's just a matter of if the Blue Jays are going to pay that.
yeah. And I don't know if Rogers is the type of company to actually, spend that kind of money on their own players. They're looking to give Juan Soto, they were in the range of 760 million for Juan Soto. But, you know, obviously the Yankees and the Mets were the two closest to actually getting him.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's a very puzzling move to see. Um, like, what does this mean for the future of the Jays? Like, what are they going to do with him really moving forward? They're going to have to try and, reconstitute his bat and try and figure out what he can do well. He's a
Mhm.
left-handed bat. It's something that the Jays needed, but you just traded away a left-handed bat who is probably your second best bat the whole year. Spencer
Mhm.
Horwitz was the Jays' second most consistent bat behind Vladdy this whole year.
Mhm.
And now he's traded, going to Pittsburgh at least, nice
Yeah.
ballpark at PNC Park. Um, but yeah, moving on, we'll talk about kind of more of the free agents that are still available out there. Does does Pete Alonso actually end up returning to the Mets? There was a report going around saying that even though the Mets signed Juan Soto, there's still a potential that Pete Alonso could return to the Mets. How likely do you think that this is actually, going to happen?
Man, I don't know because like obviously Steve Cohen has very deep pockets and I think I mean they need Pete Alonso back in that lineup. I know he struggled last year, yada yada yada, but like you look at this roster overall, like there's still glaring holes within this New York Mets team. And although you now have Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, like, does this now mean Mark Vientos moves to first base and Brett Beatty finally gets consistent playing time at third base if Pete Alonso ends up leaving? But I just, I don't know. Like, I think they really need to sign Pete Alonso or they go after Christian Walker on a cheaper deal. But they definitely need a first baseman. And with the market being so thin, I almost think you have to bring him back. Like if you're already committed with oh my God, with Juan Soto in terms of that much money, then like like honestly, what's an extra 100 million for Pete Alonso?
Yeah, and you look at Pete and he's 30, he just turned 30 years old a couple days ago. What does this mean for, for him? Because if he doesn't re-sign with the Mets, what other suitors are there really out there for him? Do you think the Yankees try and pivot from Christian Walker and try and say, screw it, we'll just take the Mets, one of the Mets
I
players in
don't even
return?
know if Pete Alonso would do that too. Like I don't know.
It depends on the money. I think that's what matters the most. And if the Yankees are the ones that are offering them the most and saying, "Hey, Pete, we'll give you a 5-year deal worth, 180 million or something," it would be a bit
Jeez.
of an overpay. But
A massive overpay.
the Yankees are, we just see with Max Fried, they're willing to take, put an extra year, put an extra couple million to
Yeah.
get a deal done.
Yeah.
I just don't really know what is next for Pete Alonso. How much? I don't think he's the one to take a discount because he's with Scott Boras, but it's just like
And he
I don't
still
know.
hasn't really signed that big ticket yet.
Yeah, and I don't know which team's really going to offer it for him. The thing is that he's already 30. Like we talk about him, we talk about Vladdy, where that deal would be done a lot easier because he's 25 and you
Hmm.
can give him a long year deal, but or a long-term deal because he can just transition to DH near the end of his career if
Yeah.
everything were to go bad. With Pete Alonso right now, what else can you really fix with him? He just turned 30. You're gonna get him for probably a 4-year, 3-year, maybe 5-year deal if you're looking to overpay. But other than
Yeah.
that, it's like I don't know what he just takes a 1-year deal to just go back to the Mets for like 35 million kind because with a team option at the end of it or a player option because of Scott Boras. I wonder if that's kind of the market for him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just like it's weird because I would have thought by now like Pete Alonso would have been signed because there's really no like there's no competition or leverage he has. Like Christian Walker is already gonna make a little bit less than you, just purely based off skill and still potential. And with those two really only being the big guys in free agency, when you look at it from a first baseman perspective, I just think it's, like what's going on and like what's going on. And obviously now it's going to take a little bit of time with some of these teams, but I I don't know if it really like Pete Alonso, it's just the year that he had this past year was very underwhelming to say the least. I mean, you're talking about an OPS that's under 800. That's not really worth 35 or 30 million a year, 25 million a year. And I think teams are noticing that. So, obviously the Mets make sense. I think just for his own sake, I don't think he would go to the Yankees just because you would kill the 6, 7 years that you were a New York Met. Like they would not respect you anymore after that. But you just look at it, his WAR is continuously regressing. I mean, he's still a 30 home run hitter in his sleep, but he's like a $25 million guy. They talk about the Mariners need one. I mean, hell, the Diamondbacks certainly could use a first baseman too. Even to a certain extent, the San Diego Padres, because they had Luis Arias playing first, but like they just have 30 million shortstops. But no, yeah, I wonder, what happens with Pete Alonso, but I do agree with you that it would be somewhere in like that 3 or 4 year type of deal.
Yeah, and you look at the like you said, look at the other first baseman available. It's like 37-year-old Paul Goldschmidt,
Yeah,
40-year-old Justin Turner, 37-year-old Donovan Solano, 39-year-old Carlos Santana. Like it's a
yeah,
bunch of older people. And the two youngest ones you really get are going to be Christian Walker and Pete Alonso.
yeah.
Uh, are you going to spend money on Anthony Rizzo, who hasn't been available the last 2 years? Are you going to spend money on Joey Gallo, who can't hit a ball unless it's a home run?
Yeah.
It's like there's not many options available, and Christian Walker is one of the guys where it's like that three-time Gold Glover, and you do get a lot of defensively at first base,
Mhm.
um, but it's just like what more, like what other teams are really looking for first baseman like that?
I mean, there's only so few
It's
just
it's
because.
yeah, it's a genuine question to be had. Moving on, two of the more of the outfielders still available that are drawing a lot of interest are Teoscar Hernandez and Anthony Santander. Both of them still available in the free agent market, and both of them still having multiple suitors in the AL East and multiple suitors across the league. I think the
Who could forget
Tigers
the
were,
Red Sox?
yeah, the Tigers were listed as a potential one for Anthony Santander. And it's just like I think a lot of people want both of these players. Both of them are just, uh, what's it called? Anthony Santander and Teoscar are both in their early 30s. So
Mhm.
a deal that's like a 4-year, 3-year deal is kind of in the range for them.
Mhm.
Um, just like what contract do you see for both of these guys?
I see more of like a 3 year deal somewhere around like 70 million to $75 million. Like I think that would be fair for both of these guys. Like for Teoscar would then mean a pay raise of like 3 million, like $3.5 million. And then for Santander it would be, like finally signing another big ticket. But you look at there's always suitors for the outfield. You're talking about the Yankees, you're talking about the Red Sox, you're talking about the Dodgers now that Mookie Betts is officially moving to shortstop. But for Santander and Teoscar, who are in their early 30s, like they're probably going to want a 5 year, 4 to 5 year deal. It's just, do teams want to do that? Because respectfully to both of these guys, they're not great defensively. So do you really want to overpay for that where, maybe you get them uh, to play the outfield for the first 2 years of that deal. But then, slowly but surely, they're gonna eventually revolt to being your designated hitter. And then, do you want to pay a DH $25 million, and do you want to have him on the books for 2 more years even after that? So I think that's the struggle that teams are having, and I think that's might be the realization of Teoscar Hernandez and Anthony Santander because they're great hitters. Like they're some of the best hitters in baseball, but defensively, they're more of a liability. They just make up for it with their bat. And you're talking about Santander with 44 home runs last year. Teoscar had 33 home runs, 99 RBIs. We know the success Teoscar had in the postseason as well, so that adds some value. But I don't see long-term deals for these guys because they're not reliable defensively.
Yeah, and like you said, both of them aren't reliable defensively. I think Santander is a little bit better, but
I mean,
Teoscar
you're
has had
splitting
his
hairs with that.
yeah, Teoscar has had his shortcomings defensively, of course.
Hmm.
But it's like the bat is so good. And like you said, transitioning them to a DH kind of role is kind of a good outlook for them where a lot of the teams out there are looking to, they might have a DH kind of in position right now, but in 2 years they might not, and they could just slide one of them over, especially Santander, switch hitter,
Hmm.
and hit 44 home runs this past year. It's a really good look for him if he can keep that hot bat and that power bat available
Hmm.
when he eventually does, move to that, half and half role probably of DH and outfielder.
Hmm.
Um, but it's just like a lot of these other guys available still out there. A lot of teams are looking for a big bat. Like the Kansas City Royals is one, for example, where they're looking for a bat and a defender. And there's not really many people out there in the outfield that can,
Yeah.
fix any of their problems. Santander is kind of the best option for them right now, but I don't think they're willing to spend the money and really, commit that long of a contract for Anthony Santander. But there's still some other options out there. Like they were talking about like Jock Peterson's bat, but obviously he can't be in the outfield. So it's like it's a very interesting question with a lot of them. Um, moving on, we'll talk about Dylan Cease is apparently in trade conversations. Do you think, and I think one of the teams mentioned was again the Boston Red Sox, which is always funny. They're always
Of
there. They're
course.
always there, but they'll never pull the trigger. But Dylan Cease is apparently in trade conversations, which I think is kind of weird to see, considering the year that he just had for the Padres, and you know, they're a team that's looking to still contend. So I don't know the real conversation to be had there unless they're just not willing to give Cease an extension, which it looks like. Um, but yeah, what do you make about potential Dylan Cease packages?
Yeah, I mean I immediately go right to the Baltimore Orioles because if they can't get Corbin Burns, it might be an overpay, but like screw it, say adios to Kobe Mayo. I would, obviously the Orioles they would love to have Connor Norby to throw in this deal right now, but you look at the Orioles and what they have to offer in terms of prospects and even MLB ready guys, like I think it just makes so much sense for them. I don't understand the obsession with the Padres wanting to trade Dylan Cease, but I think it's more just due to the fact that like this is a team that is really struggling when it comes to prospect pool. Like you have Ethan Salas and you have Leotis De Vries, but I personally, and this is not because I'm a Dodger fan. I just personally think Ethan Salas is overrated in terms of a prospect. And at this current point, like he's only 18 years old, and they continue to rush him up to high A, and he's regarded as like this big prospect. I just think the Padres are handling this horribly. But then you also have DeVries, the shortstop, who's really talented. But outside of that, you're really thin because you traded all of them for guys like Tanner Scott and obviously then Dylan Cease, and then you got everyone basically via trade. So I understand it. And for Cease, he's probably going to want a lot of money. And when you're looking at it, like you're gonna have to pay what is it like Darvish's contract is up relatively soon, but he'll probably retire after that. Like I don't know. I mean, you're still dealing with big salary when it comes to Tatis, Bogarts, and Machado, and then Cronenworth is also making close to 100 million as well. You're gonna eventually have to pay Luis Arias, so there's some contracts that are coming up for sure. I think it's just more that like the Padres would entertain the offer if they don't want to pay Dylan Cease.
Yeah, I just don't get the reason to not pay Dylan Cease. You know, you made
Yeah.
this trade. He's basically what you got for Juan Soto at this point, and I get the Padres not wanting to make a long-term financial commitment to another player, considering their team has gone bankrupt like 30 times in the last couple of years. But
Yeah,
still, it's like as Baltimore is looking more and more likely that they're not going to bring back Corbin Burns, Dylan Cease would be another good option for them. Um, but another team that's looking to trade someone is the Houston Astros. And there's
mm,
potential about a Kyle Tucker trade to the Chicago Cubs, which, talks right now are, centered around Isak Paredes and Seiya Suzuki, which is kind of interesting
mm,
because it looks like they're trying to put Paredes at third and
mhm.
Seiya Suzuki in Kyle Tucker's outfield spot. But one of the interesting notes is literally just tweeted a couple minutes ago by John Heyman is that the Astros want Luis Heel in a package for Kyle Tucker from the Yankees. Um,
Yeah,
and that's an interesting move to look at where do the Yankees try and pivot from, losing Juan Soto into getting Kyle Tucker? Well, with, I guess it's their number four starter
yeah.
uh, at this point, but still, it's another
I,
big
I
move that the Yankees are looking to make.
I mean, if I'm the Yankees, I would take that deal right away because then you can eventually re-sign Kyle Tucker. And like, no disrespect to Luis Heel, but this AL rookie class was pretty subpar.
Yeah.
To call him the rookie of the year, obviously, it's still an accomplishment, but uh, it wasn't that competitive of a rookie class. Like respectfully, there wasn't much competition. And although he was 15-7 with a 3.50 ERA, 171 strikeouts, 151 two-thirds innings pitch, it's great numbers, but you saw what he looked like in the postseason. He was very unplayable, and he even had spurts throughout the regular season where he just wasn't good. And if you're telling me that I just have to give up Kyle Tucker when you already have Max Fried, Corbin Burns, and Carlos Rodon, like screw Luis Heel. Like you could find a 4-5 pitcher. Like you still have Stroman for this year because he's probably going to opt into his contract. And then you have Clark Schmidt. Like you don't, and you have Nestor Cortez. Like you don't realistically need Luis Heel. If I'm the Yankees, I do that deal in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and it really just makes sense that, Kyle Tucker is an amazing player. And if you lose Juan Soto but are able to get Kyle Tucker in return, it's not the end of the world. It's more of can you re-sign him long term after this? Kyle Tucker had 23 home runs in 78 games this year. Like he was on pace to have probably one of the highest home run totals of his entire career. He had 29 last year in 157 games and 30
Mhm.
back-to-back years before that. He had 23 in half the amount of games. Like that's an insane thing to look at. His OPS was almost in the 1,000.
Yeah,
He was insane for the Astros this year when he was healthy. If you can get Kyle Tucker on the team to play right field and just kind of take what Juan Soto was and put him there, that's
yeah,
not the worst thing in the world for the Yankees, especially if you're only having to give up Luis Heel. Like you said, Luis Heel is pitched in 2021. He pitched against Kyle Seager and like now we're talking about him as a rookie of the
yeah.
year. It's insane. Uh
And obviously, it's probably not just going to be like a one for one. Like I'm sure, like that's just the center
There'd be like
of the
Spencer Jones.
package.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, like when you're the Yankees, like prospects for parades, it's what my dad says all the time. And you just made it to the World Series, but then you kind of got slapped around by the Dodgers in 5 games and did some damage to yourself in the process of it. But if you're telling me like Luis Heel is the reason, like he's the reason why we didn't pursue Kyle Tucker, who is one of the most underrated outfielders in the game of baseball, both offensively and defensively. I think that's a horrible look on Hal Steinbrenner. And the stove is kind of hot on him already because he's not doing a great job of living up to his dad's legacy. I mean, no offense, but it's like some of the things that George Steinbrenner would have done, and obviously I wasn't born when he was running the Yankees in the 90s and the 80s and all that, but just from what we've been hearing around the media landscape is that he would never have let Juan Soto leave. He would have, gotten the job done and he would have called out Aaron Judge for this and that during the postseason. Like, forget Luis Heel. Like, he's 27 years old. He's starting to hit his groove, but we don't even know if this is a one season blunder or not. Like, to your point, he pitched against Kyle freaking Seager, who's been retired for 3 years now. Like,
Yeah.
if you're telling me I can get a 29-year-old Kyle Tucker and then lock him up like on a 7, 8 year deal, why not do that?
Yeah, it's just like, what are we thinking when it comes to, like this is kind of the option that we're like, oh, this might be the reason why we don't make the trade. And I get it. It's probably another couple of prospects added in the deal. There has to be. You don't just trade someone of Kyle Tucker,
Yeah,
even if it's only 1 year left on his current deal. You don't trade someone like that and not get like, a couple of the other team's top prospects,
yeah.
including Luis Heel. I feel like that's more of like the uh current piece the Astros want to have in their
Mhm.
plug in their lineup right away. But it's still like, what do we do when it comes to, making this kind of a deal? Like
Yeah,
it is something really big for them. And one of the more interesting things, I kind of want to talk about the Cubs aspect of this.
yeah,
You trade for Isak Paredes at the trade deadline. You trade
yeah.
Christopher Morel, you get Isak Paredes. And now you're looking to, move off Paredes and Seiya Suzuki and
Hmm.
get Kyle Tucker. That would be a really interesting move for the Cubs. And what I would do is kind of a pivot if you can trade for Kyle Tucker, is
Yeah,
trade Cody Bellinger to the Yankees and try and get more assets as a
yeah.
result. That would be kind of my look at it. As if I was the general manager or the owner of the Cubs, I would look at it like that and try and say, we can probably raise up the price, throw
Hmm.
in a couple prospects. If we can sweeten the deal with Suzuki, Paredes, and a couple prospects, we can trade Bellinger to the Yankees and get a couple of those assets back. That's kind of my look at it right now.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't get that many assets back for Cody Bellinger just because he's still technically on a 1 year deal because he has the player option even after this following season. So
Yeah.
I don't know necessarily what you would get back. You certainly wouldn't get Luis Heel or Spencer Jones in that type of deal just because you're basically paying for 1 year of Cody Bellinger. I mean, although his dad did play with the Yankees, so maybe that entices him to stay and then sign another contract there, but you can't just assume that that's going to happen. So, I mean, it's definitely a good idea in hindsight. I just don't know for the Cubs if that's really worth it because like yeah, you'll get Kyle Tucker and maybe like the Yankees 17th or like anywhere in the 15 to 17 range in terms of prospect. Um, but it's definitely an interesting idea. I don't really understand why the Cubs would want Kyle Tucker. I don't really understand the direction of the Cubs in general, because I
Hmm.
don't think it really makes them better if they get rid of both Isak Paredes and Seiya Suzuki
Yeah.
for Kyle Tucker. Like, I don't really see how that improves your roster that much because although Isak Paredes wasn't great defensively at third base, um, he wasn't that great offensively at third base during his short stint, and neither was Christopher Morel with the Rays. Like Isak Paredes is a guy that is capable of hitting 30 home runs with 100 RBIs, which is what you're ideally getting out of Kyle Tucker. And Paredes also plays an even more premium position at third, so it would be interesting. I just don't know if it would really make the Cubs better. That's why I
Yeah.
don't get why they're involved in this.
Yeah. It's just it seems like they're kind of driving up the price for him right now, just with what they're doing. And the thing is with the Cubs, they'd have to promote a third baseman up and
Yeah.
uh because they don't have anyone else on their roster right now unless they try and make another move and try and maybe they try and bring up all the old Astros and try and get Alex Bregman too.
Yeah, maybe.
um but it's really interesting to see like they're trying to make moves. I'm trying to look at one of their okay, no, what has Matt Shaw played? He's played a majority of third base last year in Double A and Triple A. So I guess they would promote him up to the big leagues if that would be their move, promote their number
Mhm.
one prospect. But that's kind of like the only thing right now where it's like we don't really know what's the rest, what would the rest of the moves be done? One last thing before we go. I wanted to ask Roki Sasaki, his agent has said maybe it's better for Sasaki to go into like a mid-tier or a,
Yeah.
or a low market kind of
Yeah,
club.
like the Dodgers.
Yeah. Do you buy that, or do you think of that as he's just trying to, I don't know. He can't even get more money. That's the crazy thing about it. But I don't
Yeah.
know. What do you
I
what do you think about it?
I don't know. It's like he's saying because of like issues that had stemmed from his time with his former club. I just, I don't know. I don't really know how to look at it. I mean, obviously, a team like the Dodgers who get Otani and Yamamoto and then win the championship the next year would probably be enticing. And you see the brands and the sponsorships and partnerships that come from it. So that could be enticing to him. I just don't think he goes to a team like, I take it in the sense of like, oh, well, Ken Rosenthal just tweeted that Corbin Burns could sign by today. Uh,
Hmm.
I just look at it as he's not going to go to the Pirates probably. If he does, that would be a disgusting rotation with Jared Jones, Sasaki, and Skeens. Like that could definitely be a possibility. And I think that could be one of the teams he's talking about. Or the Mariners, just because of like their history with Japanese players, like Kikuchi and Ichiro Suzuki, obviously. But I make of it as like I still don't think he goes to a team like the Nationals or something like that. Like I think he still wants to go to a competitive team because I don't think it makes sense for him to leave 2 years earlier, take considerably less money, and then go to a team like the Athletics or like the Nationals or like a bottom feeder like the Rockies. Like I think they're still it's like a mid-level market, but that is still one that is competitive. Even one like the Texas Rangers, for instance, something like that.
Yeah, like what does he view as, mid-market to like small market? Does he only view high market teams as the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers? Like are those the three teams that he views as big market? Or does he view teams like the Texas Rangers, does he view them as big market because they're in Texas? And, how does he view the Padres? Does he view the Padres as a mid-market or a small market? It's
The
very
Padres are a
interesting.
small market.
I know, but how does he
No, they're a small market.
view
Don't
them?
worry.
It,
Yeah, I
it
told
depends on,
him.
I think this is kind of like it's not real. I don't think he really cares. If he goes to
Mhm.
the Dodgers and wins a couple World Series, do you think that's really gonna ruin his image in Japan? He's going to be playing with two of the Japanese heroes,
Mhm.
Yamamoto and Otani. Do you think they're going to be like, oh no, but they have Sasaki. We're not going to root for them anymore. Who cares?
Yeah.
Nobody cares at that point. I don't think he should care either. You're playing in LA. Uh, that's what I think. But that's interesting news about Corbin Burns that he might sign today. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't really know what teams are really like. The Red Sox are apparently there. They're always
Of course
apparently
they are.
there. The Giants are always a name involved, but
But at least the Giants make moves. Like getting Willy Adames is a big deal for them. It makes them competitive in the NL wild card.
yeah. And but what other moves are there? Like do the Jays have been potentially involved with Corbin Burns, apparently offering him a deal within 38 million range per
Mhm.
year, which is kind of a lot, but you never know. That's just a really interesting thing to be made.
Definitely. And I think, Sasaki, like the talent speaks for itself. And I don't buy it because like remember even like but when oh my God, English. When Otani signed with the Dodgers, everyone's like, "Oh, well Yamamoto isn't going to go there because he wants to be in the spotlight on his own team and yada yada yada." Well, it's pretty easy to get into the spotlight once you win a freaking ring because then the light is pretty spot there.
Yeah.
So I don't like I don't buy that crap where it's like Sasaki wants his own team and he wants to take the reins. Like, I don't see him going to like I don't see him going to the Cardinals, the Nationals, the Angels, the Rockies. Like, I don't see that. Like, I still think this guy wants to be competitive. And, when you look at it, the teams that are like the quote unquote smaller market teams, like even a team like the Baltimore Orioles, who are clearly starving for starting pitching, could go after a guy like Sasaki, because that's a small market team that remains competitive and Sasaki can kind of just like chill in Baltimore and, you know, I don't know
Yeah.
how diverse the city is. Like, I can only speak on LA that it's pretty freaking diverse from a Japanese culture.
Yeah, but come on, you don't think there's a lot to do in Baltimore, man? They
Oh
got like
yeah.
the Ravens.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah, who
it.
could forget?
But yeah, that'll just about do it for this episode of Breaking News Bears. I once again want to thank my co-host Evan Davis. And once again want to thank you guys, the listeners, for listening to another episode of Breaking News Bears. As the off season, progresses and we're slowly getting into, or we're not slowly, we're heating up. It's the hot stove, baby. Like we're going full throttle into the action here. But yeah, that'll just about do it for this episode of Breaking News Bears. So breaking news, all of a sudden, right as soon as we finished recording this episode, uh Kyle or Garrett Crochet has been traded to the Boston Red Sox, apparently, according to a deal from Jeff Passan, and there's been some notes about who potentially had been traded involving Red Sox beat writer Julian McWilliams saying that Red Sox number four prospect Kyle Teal, catching prospect, is in the deal for Garrett Crochet. Now that's just an interesting deal all of a sudden. As soon as we end the episode, there's a huge trade that goes down. Evan, quick thoughts on the deal.
Well, I mean, congratulations to both teams, and I apologize now to the to the Red Sox. I didn't mean anything of what I said. I take all of it back, but I mean, you're talking about a top three catching prospect in baseball in Kyle Teal, and this is a very legit trade that we're talking about where I think the White Sox might have even fleeced the Red Sox. And, we were just talking before we started recording again about how aggressive the Red Sox were. Garrett Crochet, obviously one of the best left-handed pitchers in baseball. However, this is a guy that's dealt with a lot of injuries and kind of had his workload slowed down towards the back end of the season when they were trying to trade for him because it was his first year being a starter. So it's interesting to see how the Red Sox handle him. But this is a huge get, and I'm honestly more focused on what the White Sox got rather than what the Red Sox got because Kyle Teal was the Red Sox fourth best prospect, and this is a guy who honestly could get to the major leagues this year, and the White Sox, they need position players everywhere, but I feel like this is one of the few that they've actually gotten in a trade that immediately can make an impact for this team. When you look at Kyle Teal's numbers at AAA, obviously not that many games, 28 games, but you're talking about a 255 batting average to go along with a 717 OPS, a couple home runs, 18 RBIs, and pretty decent walk to strikeout numbers. So I'm really impressed with what the White Sox got in return. Obviously, there's probably going to be more pieces to this. I can't imagine this being a one for one, but wow. I mean, right after, literally 2 minutes after we clicked end recording, the Red Sox, who we said were 7 years, 190 for Max Fried, ventured to another left-handed pitcher who doesn't cost as much from a contractual standpoint, but this is a big return for Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, we look at it. Jeff Passan has tweeted there's multiple prospects going in this deal. I don't know the extent of the other prospects going, but it looks like the main one that's headlining this deal is Kyle Teal, and he's somebody who can be the starting catcher for the White Sox day one. I mean, they had Martin Maldonado starting last year, and he was the worst player in baseball.
Hmm.
You have somebody who can come to this team right away and be a
Oh,
starting
here
catcher.
I apologize for interrupting you, but the players have been announced, like the prospects. Do you mind if I read them off to you?
Yeah,
Okay, so obviously, I apologize for cutting you off, but we're kind of like just going on a. So
yeah,
it's obviously the big ones. Kyle T. Holy shit, Braden Montgomery. So right now it's the fourth prospect for
the
the
fifth
Red Sox,
prospect.
the fifth prospect, Chase Meardroth, the 11th prospect, and pitcher Wilkeman Gonzalez, the 14th prospect.
That is a huge, huge deal, and
Shh.
all of them are up there in AAA. And yeah, wait, this is kind of crazy that all of them
Yeah.
are being traded. These are guys that are gonna, except for Braden Montgomery, who's the number five prospect, those are three guys that are probably gonna be on the White Sox starting roster day on opening day. That's kind of insane to see that. Is that a bit of an overpay? It might be. I
I,
feel if Crochet can stay healthy and you know prove that he can pitch
God.
multiple innings like consistently because like you said at the end of the year last year he was going like 4 inning outings, 3 inning outings, and he's had an injury 2022, came back last year or came back 2023, didn't pitch that much, and then all of a sudden became a starting pitcher with length this year. It is very interesting. I don't know.
Oh my God.
It is very interesting.
I mean, they found a team that was desperate enough to make this trade, but I mean, they just drafted Braden Montgomery with the 12th pick in the draft this past year. Like, he hasn't even played a game yet, but this is a 21-year-old 6'2", 220, a switch hitter. I mean, he literally has everything that you would want in an outfielder. He's a switch hitter, he's tall, he's got size. Oh my God. I like, and then you're talking about Chase Meardroth, a AAA guy, 23 years old, who the Red Sox just also drafted not too long ago, who batted close to 300 with an 837 OPS. Not a huge power guy, but he walked 105 times to 71 strikeouts. Like, that's a legit piece too. Wilkeman Gonzalez, a pitcher for the Red Sox, and obviously I'm stupid, 22 years old, who they signed in international money, only got up to Double A this year. I'm not really worried about ERA when it comes to minor leagues. Not great strikeout to walk numbers, but only 22 years old. He's got to put some size onto him, but his fastball and curveball grade out pretty nice, as well as his changeup. Like, God damn, for 2 years of Crochet, who hasn't been a starter until this year, is uh, wow. That is just crazy.
I mean, we talk about. I was just talking about how I wasn't happy with the Andres Gimenez trade. I would be even more pissed right now if I was a Red Sox fan. I'm not even gonna lie to
Yeah,
you. Like, you traded four of your top 15 prospects, including your number four and number five prospect, for a guy who really hasn't been healthy. Yes, he's a 25-year-old fireball first or pitcher, lefty and everything all about that, and all-star this past year, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy and hasn't really been able to prove that he's, able to go multiple like long outings ever since basically the trade deadline last year. Like
yeah.
this is it's a very interesting move, and if it works out for
Wow.
the Red Sox, it's perfect for them. They got their next ace, but yikes, I don't know if that's a great move for the Red Sox. Like
I
I'm
mean,
already looking at Red Sox fans right now talking about on Twitter that this is one of the worst deals ever just because you traded the next Buster Posey pretty much. At least
I,
that's what they're saying.
I mean, look, Garrett Crochet is only 25 years old, so that's why you had to trade a lot for him. And he also had 209 strikeouts this season in like 140 innings or so, 146 innings. Like, he had a strikeout to walk ratio of 6, which is just ridiculous. But again, 146 innings pitched after the last 3 seasons, and he missed all of 2022. He hadn't even thrown 100 innings prior to that. And when you look at his game log over time, like, he only threw 17 and a third innings in September, and that came in 5 starts. So, like, I don't know. And then, like, over the course of the last 2 months, he only threw 32 innings. Like,
Even if you
and
go to
even in
July,
yeah, and even in August, like, yeah, you could go back to even the start of July, like 13 innings in July, like, and that was when they didn't want to injure him because they thought they might trade him. So I get that, but like, you're talking about only 32 innings pitched in the last 2 months, and you just traded the third best catching prospect in baseball along with a guy in Braden Montgomery who is no slouch as well. Like, he's drafted number 12 overall for a reason. Like, this is a phenomenal outfielder. So, I clap it up for the White Sox, man. A
they
robbery,
made a good deal.
a robbery in broad daylight. Because I just, I still don't understand it. Like that is an insane haul.
Yeah, that is really nice for the White actually end up getting, very four very huge prospects for the White Sox. And, after the all-time worst season they just had this past year, that's a really good haul to get for a guy that you obviously didn't want to pay long term because you're the White Sox and you don't spend a lot of money on anybody. And you got four really good young prospects that can come and, really help your team right now, except for Braden Montgomery. You have three guys that you can plug on your major league
Yeah.
roster right now. Really good deal for the White Sox.
And I mean, if we want to just continue the breaking news train, it looks like Alex Bregman and the Yankees are getting close on a deal right now, per sources that I have. No, I don't have any
Mm.
sources. Brian Hawk, if I pronounce your last name wrong, I apologize. He covers the Yankees for the MLB. He's saying hearing more buzz connecting the Yankees to Alex Bregman. Interest is real. This
That
is
makes
crazy.
sense.
I mean, it's crazy, but like now, do the Red Sox go after Corbin Burns because you look at it like now you have Brian Bayo, Garrett Crochet, Nick Pavetta. Like it's not a.
Lucas Giolito is coming back. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot Giolito. I forgot about him. No disrespect to you. You were just injured last year. But like this rotation still isn't like that great. Like we haven't seen Garrett Crochet pitch deep into the season. How is he going to bode well if the team even makes it to October? And if you're Corbin Burns, like, do you really still like Fenway Park has the aura and all of that, but if you want a World Series ring, which you still are searching for, and how competitive that division might be, I don't know if it's really worth going to the Red Sox because then you're also staying in division. Now these players know you through the like in their back of the head. You can't really fool a guy anymore. I don't know, but it's definitely enticing. I think if the Red Sox are now proving that they're going all in, you might as well entertain the option of Corbin Burns, but you still need more offensively. Like this team still isn't good offensively.
Yeah. It's it's very that's a very nice thing to do though. Like that's a very good deal. And I think it might take them out of the Corbin Burns sweepstakes. And I think this gives more leeway to a team like the Jays and the Giants to really go after Corbin Burns. But I really like that Alex Bregman deal for the Yankees if they can get it done.
Hmm.
I think it makes sense. You move Jazz back to second if Glaber eventually leaves, and then you have Bregman plug up at third, which would be open. So then you'd have an infield of random first baseman. You don't know who it is going to be
Yeah.
yet. Uh, Chisholm, Volpe, and Bregman. It's a decent infield, a lot better than having Jazz play out of position. Obviously, he was okay at third base, but now you can have Jazz at his normal position. But yeah, very
This is
interesting.
this is oh my God. Something about the Red Sox wanting left-handed pitchers from the White Sox, eh? They did this with
Yeah,
Chris Sale, now Garrett Crochet. I want to see what Red Sox Twitter is like because
they are not enjoying this deal, it looks like. At least from what I've seen, I know Devers Enjoyer is not the best, most reputable
yeah.
Red
Oh,
Sox
I gotta see
fan.
what he's saying. I don't spoil it. I gotta see what he's saying. Where is he? Devers
J
Enjoyer Muse?
Jared Carabas is saying the streets were talking and like calling
Yeah,
himself the
that's what
scoop
he.
shop. But like, I don't need, that's not really his deal or his opinion on the deal, but I
Nobody
don't know.
questioned the scoop shop TM ever again. The streets were to. I mean, look, if you're the Red Sox fan base, you're kind of just like, what are we doing? Like, Garrett Crochet is great, but that big of a package could have landed you a more reliable starting pitcher. And again, like numbers wise, you look at it, even in the short time in September, 17 and a third innings, 29 strikeouts to only two walks. Like the strikeout stuff is legit. It's just is like Kyle Tiedemann, like people were talking about him being the catcher of the future for the Red Sox. Like, I mean, I don't know how serious those talks were. Obviously, they're not anymore because now he's going to be the future for the White Sox. But like, the Red Sox really didn't have a backup plan. Like they just lost Danny Jansen, obviously. I thought Kyle Teal was going to be in the Red Sox, not opening day lineup, but I thought he would be there like come All-Star break.
Eventually. Yeah. It's a weird deal. Weird deal. I think it's
Wow.
very interesting for the White Sox. I think they,
I think the Red
first
Sox
of all,
got fleeced.
I think right now, yeah, the White Sox are the very clear winner of the trade just because they were looking to trade Garrett Crochet this July, and we weren't really sure what he would get, but they made a lot out of it.
And Kyle Teal's a lefty. Oh, I didn't even know he
Yeah.
was a left-handed bat. Oh, this makes it so much. So they traded basically, obviously, you can't trade draft picks in the MLB, but they traded, what is it? When you look at it, they traded two first-round picks
Yeah.
and forget the rest. They traded back-to-back years of first-round picks. Oh, oh. I'm so happy. Like, I wish the Padres made this trade because I would have been so much happier. Like, if they had to trade, because like apparently the White Sox asked for Ethan Salas and Leotis Dave Rice, like the two best prospects and the only two prospects that the Padres have left. I wish the Padres did that deal because I'd be laughing in their face. Oh, oy vey. Oh my God.
All right, but that'll just about do it for now
Oh.
for this episode for Breaking News Bears. What a, quick little bonus feature to the end of this pod, but that'll just about do it for this episode. Thanks once again for listening for another episode of Breaking News Bears.